At the ripe age of 5, I went to see Catch Me If You Can with my parents. If you aren't familiar with it, it follows a teenager named Frank Abagnale, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who becomes one of the most successful bank fraudsters in US history. However, that is not the part of the movie that I found particularly fascinating when I suddenly gained consciousness a few years later. What really intrigued me was how this character could convince so many people to do whatever he wanted through sheer confidence alone. He faked being an airline pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer to such a believable degree that he was instantly offered jobs and money wherever he went. Frank hadn't even finished high school, and he probably wasn't the smartest guy ever, and yet his incredible sense of self-agency allowed him to become more powerful than anyone his age. We hear stories of fraudsters and conmen like this quite often, usually through films based on true stories that frame them as cautionary tales about what happens when you slither and slime your way through life. But I don't think that's the cultural sentiment these days. With the rise of social media and now artificial intelligence, a new type of rich, powerful youth to aspire to be is emerging. One defined by new money and few morals, interested only in creating the most fanatic, attention-grabbing products possible at the expense of everyone else. This is the rise of the algorithmic aristocracy.
Would Charlie Kirk have gotten assassinated if he were Chad? Well, probably not, and here's why. Good-looking people experience something called the halo effect, so it's quite possible that if Charlie were to be better looking, someone wouldn't have hated him enough to assassinate him. What happened to him is quite terrible, and this might be an insensitive video to make, but I'm really trying to bring awareness to how brutal the Black Pill is.
Here's a guy you've probably seen on the internet lately. He goes by the online persona name Clavicular. And yes, he did just say that Charlie Kirk might have not been killed if he had been more attractive. But what you might not know about Clavicular is he has a real name. Braden Peters, born in December of 2005, was a normal kid from New Jersey. He had a dog, a father who worked a typical business job, and a mother who was a bodybuilder. You might be wondering why I'm talking about him in the past tense, as if he's passed away. That's because Braden Peters, or at least the idea of him, has been put to the grave, evolving into a bastardized, maximized version of him thanks to the influence of social media. When Braden began browsing YouTube videos of Rich Piana and bodybuilding.com forums, his mindset on life drastically changed. Though pretty unconfident and awkward before the internet took hold of him, posts describing shoulder-to-waist ratios and jaw lines pushed his insecurities over the edge, causing him to obsess over one goal: to do everything in his power to become the most popular looks maxer who ever lived. Looks maxing, the attempt to maximize one's physical attractiveness through both common and extreme means, led Clavicular to smash his face with a hammer in hopes that his bones would grow back stronger and sharper, perform dick-ups by placing weights on his penis to increase girth and erection strength, and inject testosterone by the time he was only 14. With a lifestyle that extreme, and at such a young age no less, it was only a matter of time before the clavicular ideal began to garner widespread attention. He started uploading YouTube videos documenting his looks maxing process, injecting peptides and detailing his daily routine to manage his cortisol levels, something he repeatedly stresses the importance of.
What the f*** is this? There's cheese on it.
But when he began streaming on the platform Kick, that's when he really achieved major virality. Clavicular streams are the epitome of an absurdist postmodern society. He throws out slurs as if they're commonplace.
Thanks.
And when he's out in public, frequently gets into fights. I could go on and on about Clavicular's backstory, but I think I've proven to you that Braden's new persona is largely a product of the internet and the attention economy, and in this reality, morals and positive impact become an afterthought. To really drive this point home, we can look at a more recent instance of Clavicular's extreme behavior. But before we do that, let's talk about something that allows you to create your own models and other useful items, which is today's sponsor, the Phrozen Arco FDM 3D printer. I've heard about 3D printers for a while now, and when Phrozen reached out to me saying they wanted me to try out their printer, it was a no-brainer. I really wanted to try one of these things. As a first-time user, I can tell you it was really easy to set up and start using. But even if you've been using a Cartesian printer like the Bamboo Lab A1 and you're ready to print bigger models without the hassle, Arco is the next machine for you. You can find 3D models for basically anything on sites like PixUp3D and Printables.com. I'm a big RuneScape guy, so when I saw I could print an heirloom keychain, I immediately downloaded it, loaded it into the 3D printer software, and let the machine do its thing. Arco has a fixed platform that keeps the model stationary. Its flying gantry moves the print head upwards smoothly, enabling faster, more precise prints. Basically, if you don't understand any of those terms, it's just a really damn good printer, and you can print models up to 30 by 30 by 30 centimeters. I'm also a big fan of the manga Berserk, which is why I decided to print out this sick 3D model of Guts. And I decided to do one more RuneScape model just because. Shout out Jad. If you've been wanting to get into the 3D printing game like me, you should definitely consider Arco as your first one. If you want to check it out, you can click the first link in the description. On December 24th, 2025, Clavicular live streamed himself driving over someone in his Cybertruck. In the video, a man, later revealed to be another live streamer, is standing in front of his car being a nuisance. Clavicular had dealt with similar situations in which this guy showed up on his stream and caused problems, but this was the first time he decided to act violently. Afterward, you can even hear him say that he hoped he killed the guy.
Is he dead?
I don't know.
Hopefully.
Now, what punishment did Clavicular receive for running someone over? Nothing. He spoke to the police about what happened and was free to go shortly after. You can make plenty of arguments for why what Clavicular did is, in fact, not a crime, which many people have been doing on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. But what this really highlights is that in our current society and attention economy, there are little to no repercussions for acting as flagrantly and polarizing as possible. In fact, in many cases, it is now rewarded. The clip went viral, shooting Clavicular into mainstream superstardom, even more than he was already approaching. And due to his popularity, Clavicular has had a New York Times article written about him and was even invited to walk on a runway show in New York City for the designer Elena Velez. With that kind of positive feedback for his behavior, what do you think that signals to him? I need to become more extreme. I need to become more confident and certain. I need to looks max even harder. I need to drift farther and farther away from deeply thinking about the world's problems and instead exacerbate them through my own actions. Now, Clavicular has evolved from the face of the looks-maxing community into a mainstream personality. During an appearance on the Michael Knowles Show, which is affiliated with Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire, he told Knowles that even though he leans closer to the political right, he would vote for Gavin Newsom in 2028 because Newsom is better looking.
Yeah, but I mean, like this next election cycle, who's going to win? It's going to be Gavin Newsom against JD Vance because JD Vance is subhuman and Gavin Newsom mugs.
JD Vance is subhuman?
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
He's got a very short total facial width to height ratio. He's obese, very recessed side profile, whereas Newsom is like 6'3" Chad.
Does Clavicular actually think this way? I'm certain there's a part of him that's been developing since his early teens who genuinely thinks he should vote for whoever is the most attractive, but a lot of what Clavicular now does and says is merely just to generate attention and therefore more money, power, and influence. In a GQ article, which has been a really useful reference for what I've been describing in this video, Kieran Press Reynolds puts it like this. To anyone in the know, Clavicular was pretty clearly just saying shit. He was put on the spot and came up with a provocative answer that fit neatly into his impossible worldview, namely that good looks are everything to the point that they can determine the course of history. He isn't going to vote for Newsom. He probably isn't going to vote at all because he thinks politics is a waste of time. Through sensationalist behavior, Braden Peters has transformed from an average, awkward teen into Clavicular, a caricature of himself, amplifying the most polarizing aspects of his character and using the internet to reinforce the impulses behind his negative actions, neglecting any vision of a long, prosperous, and healthy future in favor of an immediately gratifying, rapid rise to fame. And here I am contributing to that by making this video. Nice. In the attention economy, where mass financial gain comes from spectacle over depth, cooperation, and intellectualism, more and more people, young people especially, abandon the search for knowledge and productive discussion and instead focus on similar, though usually less egregious, ways of cultivating attention as Clavicular does. When I speak about what drives people's behaviors in society, I always return to the word incentive, because without the proper incentives and rewards for doing good, difficult things, most young people aren't going to do them. In the past, there were strong incentives to pursue higher education and to be a decent person. People with a college degree out-earned those without across the board. Social cooperation, before the internet and smartphones made it incredibly easy to acquire our necessities without interacting with anyone in person, required at least a baseline level of manners and social skills. Now, you could argue that these qualities are far more optional. You don't need to be particularly smart to accumulate large amounts of wealth from nothing. In fact, it's sometimes more advantageous to at least act a bit stupid. You also don't need to be especially likable. All you need to do is understand something that, in the past, only the wealthiest and most insulated parts of society truly knew. The answer to the question, what gets the people going? And I believe the rise of AI has only accelerated this problem. Enter my next candidate for leader of the algorithmic aristocracy, Cluely founder and CEO Roy Lee. Now, Roy Lee is not someone I can describe as unintelligent. He was initially offered admission to Harvard, but that offer was rescinded when they found out he had a high school suspension. Instead, he attended another Ivy League school, Columbia University. I learned quite a bit about Roy and his aspirations and intentions after reading the article Child's Play by Sam Criss, which, by the way, is the best article I've read this year. But for those of you who find it hard to focus on more than a few words on a page for more than a few seconds, I'll try to explain parts of the article in my own words and relate it to our attention aristocracy. Just like Clavicular, Roy is someone who harnessed the power of the internet to the point where he felt he could do and achieve anything. From the moment he began attending college, he believed what he was learning would soon become obsolete, offering little incentive towards his larger life goals. He wanted to be on the right side of AI's great divide, or as Chris puts it, the bifurcation of society. Essentially, it's just a fancy way of describing how AI is going to make the middle class basically become extinct. Acting on that desire, Roy partnered with an engineering student, Neil Shanmugam, and together they founded Interview Coder. What was Interview Coder, you ask? A tool designed to cheat on coding interviews. Using a transparent window that could overlay one side of a Zoom meeting, the LLM Claude could listen to questions and provide answers in real time. Roy even used the software during an Amazon interview and successfully received a job offer because of it. Of course, he declined the offer and instead uploaded the footage to YouTube, which led to his expulsion from Columbia and sparked his rise to fame. Seeing how viral the clip became, Roy quickly capitalized on the hype and launched an upgraded version of Interview Coder called Cluely. Most people first heard of the brand Cluely through, unsurprisingly, a viral advertisement circulating across social media, which showed Roy using speculative Cluely-enabled glasses on a blind date. It was marketed as a cheating tool for literally everything, accompanied by the description, "We built Cluely so you never have to think alone again. It sees your screen, hears your audio, feeds you answers in real time. Why memorize facts, write code, or research anything when a model can do it in seconds? The future won't reward effort, it'll reward leverage." Those words perfectly echo the central theme of this video and reveal Roy's intentions with his product. They also reflect the culture inside Cluely's offices themselves. Chris, who visited the space, describes it beautifully. On the ground floor, I found a stack of foam costumes in plastic crates, each neatly labeled Sonic Hedgehog, Olaf Snowman, Pikachu. A significant part of working at Cluely seemed to involve dressing up as cartoon characters for viral videos. Through a door, I could just glimpse a dingy fitness dungeon, housing 2 treadmills and a huge pile of discarded Amazon boxes. On one of the machines, a Cluely employee panted and huffed in the dark. We avoided eye contact. There was something he very badly wanted to impress on me, which was that Cluely cultivates a fratty tech bro atmosphere. Their pantry was piled high with bottles of something called Core Power Elite. I was offered a protein bar. The inside of the wrapper read Daily Intentions. Be my boss self. We're big believers in protein, Roy said. It's impossible to get fat at Cluely. Nothing here has any fat. The kitchen table was stacked with Labubu dolls. It's aesthetics, Roy explained. Women love Labubus, so we have Labubus. At this point in my reading, it was clear that Roy and Clavicular shared many of the same underlying values. They're both people who grew up on the internet and fully understood the attention economy, thereby rejecting efforts to create something meaningful or positively influential, instead choosing to bastardize their self-image in the pursuit of money, power, and fame. Roy, like many founders in Silicon Valley, generated enormous hype around the speculation of the product rather than the product itself. He doubled down on social media attention and spent significant amounts of money producing viral advertisements, even though few people actually understood what Cluely did. Then, in June 2025, Cluely raised $15 million in a Series A round led by Andreessen Horowitz. So, what is Cluely's revolutionary product? Does it really allow people to never think again? Well, it turns out it's one big nothing burger. It's not much more than a ChatGPT wrapper, which occasionally doesn't even work, as described in the article. But somehow, they generated $15 million in funding. Why? Because in our current economy, the primary driver of wealth for the already wealthy is speculative hype and sensationalism rather than a useful, shippable product. This dynamic has existed in Silicon Valley for years, but Roy understands that it's no longer confined to San Francisco. He understands that attention is the most valuable currency of the 21st century, and being highly agentic and self-assured, he's willing to abandon higher purposes in favor of generating as much wealth as possible for himself and the small circle around him. Roy's product is also the perfect representation of our current societal incentives. Why put in a ton of effort to learn in school when it doesn't matter as much anymore? Why go through the hard work of trying to find a relationship if I can just use a dating app and take out a bunch of the awkward scene of first going up to someone and gauging whether they're interested or not? Why write a video essay on YouTube myself if I can just ask AI to write it for me? I swear I wrote this video. No, what matters is that you filter yourself, curate your brand, and amplify the parts that get the most engagement, because with enough engagement comes financial stability, and financial stability is the backbone of nearly everything we pursue, especially in a world where the cost of living keeps rising. There are a couple arguments I want to address that you might have. The first is, isn't it a good thing that more average people can create an exceptional life for themselves through means like social media? Yes, in theory, due to social media and the attention economy, there is more of an opportunity for the average person to make it out the mud, so to speak. I also like the fact that it forces you to develop confidence in yourself, to present yourself in this way, which in most cases is a great trait to have. But the reality is, you need to be a very specific person to know how to generate attention and act and think in a certain way, which I'd argue most people can't or aren't willing to do. There's also 100% a bit of luck involved, and I dread a society where everyone's interests in how they want to contribute doesn't vary, and instead everyone just wants to become influencers. I mean, that's kind of happening already. The other argument you might make is, hasn't the world always worked this way? Like, haven't the most influential people always been the ones who are the most confident and persuasive rather than the smartest or the most virtuous? I would say yes to an extent, but today the incentives for doing genuinely good or difficult things have fallen so dramatically that an unusually large amount of people are willing to abandon authenticity and avoid the kinds of challenges that build moral character. So this is the new generation of influence, the new algorithmic aristocracy. A generation of frank Abagnales who, through sheer confidence and abandoning of effort and morals, only focus their limited efforts on whatever causes the most people to pay attention to them, giving them insane amounts of influence and therefore opportunities for social status and wealth. Popularity is now accessible to almost anyone, but with that popularity comes a relentless competition to become the most outlandish, confident character imaginable. As for what we can do to stop this, a lot of fucking things would need to change. We would need to radically change our lifestyles and the economy and bring it to a place where we reasonably won't reach in decades. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. As I often say, seek friction in your life. Challenge yourself intellectually. Don't offload your thinking to a random online influencer's opinion, yes, I recognize the irony, or a chatbot, and try to articulate your own thoughts in your own words through your own writing. Engage with difficult texts. Do kind things for people simply because they are kind to do. Inconvenience yourself sometimes for the sake of others. Just be a normal fucking person, man. Not normal in the negative connotation sense, but like normal in a way that you can just have a conversation and not have it devolve into looks-maxing, brain-rotting, 6'7", skibidi toilet, whatever. I don't even know. I gotta keep up with the brain rot terms. I gotta stay tapped into this stuff because I feel like some of that's out of style. But you get what I'm saying, right? We gotta be normal fucking people. How about that? Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments, and if you liked this video, maybe you'll like my video on gooning. Yeah, you know what gooning is. You want to get into the disturbing world of gooning? There it is. Click on that video. I actually have no idea if you're going to like that one, but whatever. All right, I'm leaving. Goodbye.